You're about to scroll past this. Aren't you? I can feel it, the small, restless urge in your hand, the tiny impatience in your mind, already looking for the next thing, the next answer, the next flicker of stimulation. But pause. Just for a moment. What if this exact impulse, the one that wants to skip, to move on, is the very pattern that has kept you circling the same loop of reality, year after year? In the quantum field, nothing happens by chance. You didn't arrive here randomly. If these words have found you now, it's because some deeper part of you has already whispered, I'm ready. Ready to stop living on autopilot. Ready to interrupt the old cycle. Ready to breathe into a new way of being. Think about it. How many times have you chased inspiration, another video, another book, another teaching, only to feel the fire fade within days? That's not your failure. It's the nature of what I call the seeking frequency. It's a vibration of always reaching, never arriving, like a traveler who keeps buying maps but never actually steps onto the path. The truth is, the universe does not respond to how hard you think or how intensely you want. It responds to the state of your being. And when your being is caught in seeking, in grasping, in the endless motion of not enough yet, the field mirrors back the same thing: more seeking, more lack, more distance. But here's the paradox. The shift does not happen by doing more. It happens by doing less. Not through effort, but through stillness. Not by adding another practice to your list, but by mastering the art of reception. Imagine a garden. If you keep digging and pulling and checking the soil every hour, the seeds cannot sprout. Growth happens in the silence of the earth, in the quiet surrender of waiting. Right now, you have that same choice. When the urge to move on appears, pause. Place your hand on your heart. Breathe slowly. Whisper to yourself, not I am trying, I am working, I am manifesting. Simply say, I am ready to receive. Those words are a declaration. They rewrite your relationship with the quantum field. They tell your whole nervous system, I am no longer chasing. I am open. I am here. Do this for just 3 days. Each time the old pattern of restlessness arises, interrupt it gently with stillness, and watch what unfolds. Not necessarily fireworks or instant miracles, but the small, subtle alignments. A conversation at the right time. A resource you didn't expect. A synchronicity that reminds you the field is listening. Because it is. Science already shows us why. In quantum physics, the observer changes the observed. Your state of awareness literally influences which possibilities collapse into form. And in quantum entanglement, 2 particles remain connected across any distance. Change one, and the other responds instantly. Your dreams, your desires, your vision of life, they are entangled with you. But that connection only becomes active when you shift into coherence, not chaos. Seeking is chaos. Receiving is coherence. When you choose stillness, your signal becomes clear. Undeniable. It's like tuning a radio from static into the exact station you wanted all along. The music was always there, but your frequency was scattered. This is where the whispers begin. Not the loud demands of the ego, not the noisy chatter of fear, but the quiet voice of deeper wisdom. That inner guidance is subtle, like the faint pull of the tide on the shore. You only hear it when the mental waves calm down. And when you act on it quickly, before logic smothers it, you begin to build trust with life itself. I know it feels risky. The personality wants guarantees. It wants a roadmap, every step visible before moving. But quantum reality doesn't work like that. In the field of infinite possibilities, the path unfolds step by step, not all at once. Like walking in candlelight, you see only the next few feet, but that is enough to continue. And here is the invitation when the whisper comes. Honor it. Send the message. Make the call. Sign up for the class. Take the small action. It's through these tiny leaps of faith that your connection with the field strengthens, even if the outcome looks uncertain, even if it feels like a detour. Trust that your deeper wisdom sees a larger picture than the mind can grasp. This trust is not passive, it is active, allowing. It's like a river that stops fighting the rocks and discovers the power of flowing around them. The water doesn't force its way, it moves with grace, and eventually carves valleys out of stone. As you practice, something profound emerges. You begin to live in flow, not as a rare experience, but as your natural rhythm. Flow means moving when it's time to move, and being still when it's time to be still. It means speaking when words carry truth, and listening when silence holds more wisdom. Most of us have been trained to fight against these rhythms, pushing when the energy isn't there, staying passive when life is calling us to step forward. But when you tune into your deeper intelligence, you sense the right timing, the sacred timing, what the ancient Greeks called kairos, the right moment that ripens naturally. And here's the most radical truth: you are not separate from what you desire. This isn't metaphor. At the deepest level of the quantum field, there is no separation between observer and observed. Your longings are not outside of you, waiting to be fetched. They are aspects of your own consciousness, calling to be expressed through you. Wanting more love is your consciousness, longing to radiate love more fully. Wanting abundance is your consciousness yearning to express creativity more freely. So manifestation is not about bending reality with techniques or controlling it with affirmations. It's about allowing who you already are to emerge more openly, more courageously. Just like a flower doesn't bloom because someone pulls on its petals, it blooms when the right conditions, light, soil, water are present. Stillness, trust, and surrender are those conditions for you. When you create space for reception, you are not being lazy. You are making room for the intelligence that spins galaxies to flow into your everyday life. And then your days become less about chasing, more about unfolding, less about proving, more about expressing, less about control, more about communion with the larger field of being. And slowly, you notice the shift. Being yourself feels safer than wearing the mask. Trusting your inner guidance feels steadier than clinging to external validation. The home you were searching for was never out there. It was here, within you, waiting for you to stop long enough to listen. So, as you sit with these words, feel them not as more information, but as an invitation to pause, to breathe, to whisper to yourself, I am ready to receive. Because when you declare that not just to me, but to the field itself, you collapse possibility into reality. You step into a life not driven by restless seeking, but guided by authentic presence. And that is the beginning of quantum living. 1. The art of stopping. There is a strange kind of courage that most of us are never taught the courage to stop. We live in a culture that praises motion, achievement, and constant effort. From the moment we wake up, the rhythm of life pushes us forward: emails, deadlines, obligations, plans. It tells us that if we just keep moving faster, if we just try harder, if we just squeeze more into each day, then maybe, just maybe, we will finally feel complete. But the truth is far simpler, and perhaps more uncomfortable. It is not doing more that brings us closer to the life we long for. It is the willingness to stop. Stopping sounds small, even trivial, but in practice, it is revolutionary. Because to stop is to interrupt the momentum of lack. To stop is to step out of the frequency of not yet, and step into the frequency of already enough. Imagine this: your mind is like a spinning wheel, turning faster and faster, throwing sparks of desire and fear in every direction. You think the only solution is to spin harder, to get the wheel moving so fast that somehow it will fly you into the future you want. But the wheel does not take you forward. It only keeps you trapped in the same circle. When you stop, even for a single breath. The circle opens. You are no longer bound by repetition. A new path becomes visible. This is why I say, it only takes a minute, 1 minute, to place your hand gently on your heart, to let your body feel the weight and warmth of that touch, to breathe deeply as if for the first time, and as you breathe, you whisper quietly to yourself, not a prayer of striving, not a plea for more, but the simplest of invitations, I am ready to receive. Those words may seem ordinary, but they carry a power that can shift your entire state of being. Because when you declare, I am ready to receive, you are announcing to the field of reality that you are no longer chasing, you are no longer bound by scarcity, you are no longer postponing your wholeness to some distant future. In that moment, you are here, you are open, you are enough. Think of a thirsty plant in dry soil. You could pour water endlessly over hardened ground, but if the soil is too tight, the water will run off. The roots remain parched, but loosen the soil just a little, and the same water can sink in and nourish. Stopping is how we loosen the soil of our being. It softens the tension, makes space, and allows the nourishment that was always available to finally soak in. I know, from my own journey, how difficult this can feel. For years, I believed that if I wasn't working, striving, pushing, I was wasting time. Stillness felt like laziness. Silence felt like failure. But eventually, the exhaustion of endless seeking broke me open. And in that breaking, I discovered something unexpected. Stillness was not emptiness. It was fullness. It was the space in which everything I had been chasing could finally land. Conscious stopping is not about passivity. It is not giving up, and it is not retreating into denial. It is an active choice to interrupt the restless patterns of the mind. It is the discipline of saying, I will not run from myself today. I will not distract myself into oblivion. I will sit. I will breathe. And I will open. When you do this even for 60 seconds, the nervous system shifts. The body, which has been bracing itself for years, as though life were a battlefield, begins to relax. The heart and brain fall into rhythm. You move from fight or flight into coherence. This is not mystical poetry. This is biology. Science tells us that heart-brain coherence opens the door to clarity, creativity, and alignment. In other words, stopping changes the frequency you broadcast. And when your frequency changes, reality responds. Not because the universe is a machine dispensing rewards for proper technique, but because you and the universe are not separate. You are woven into the same fabric of consciousness. When you soften, the fabric softens. When you open, the field opens. Over time, this practice becomes more than a minute-long pause. It becomes a way of moving through life. You begin to notice that when you stop resisting, solutions appear naturally. When you stop forcing, conversations flow more easily. When you stop grasping, the very things you thought were beyond your reach begin to arrive quietly, gracefully, in their own time. But perhaps the greatest gift of stopping is not what you receive from the world, but what you rediscover within yourself. Because in the stillness, you meet the part of you that was never incomplete to begin with. The part of you that has been whole all along, waiting patiently beneath the noise. It is humbling, sometimes painful, because when you stop, you also feel the grief you've been outrunning. You feel the loneliness, the fear, the shadows you thought you had left behind. Yet this is also the healing. By facing what arises in the silence, you are no longer enslaved by it. The darkness loses its power the moment you turn toward it with open eyes. Stopping is therefore not just a spiritual technique. It is an act of deep honesty, an act of compassion for yourself, a declaration that you are worthy of your own presence. So, the next time you feel the restless urge to keep moving, remember, it is not weakness to pause. It is wisdom. Take 1 minute, place your hand on your heart, breathe, Whisper, I am ready to receive. And in that simple practice, you are no longer chasing life. Life is meeting you exactly where you are. 2. The flow of quantum time. We have been trained to measure our lives by clocks and calendars, by deadlines and achievements. From childhood, we inherit the belief that time is something we must conquer, something that is always slipping away, something that punishes us if we do not keep pace. Every tick of the clock feels like pressure: produce more, achieve faster, accomplish before it's too late. But what if this way of seeing time is only half the truth? What if there is another rhythm, one that doesn't bind us, but liberates us? This is what I call quantum time. In the linear world, time is a straight line that pushes us forward relentlessly. In the quantum world, time is more like the ocean. There are waves that rise and fall, tides that come and go. There are moments when life calls you to step boldly forward, and moments when the wisest act is to rest, to receive, to be still. To live only in linear time is to fight the current, always swimming against the tide, exhausting yourself in the name of progress. But to live in quantum time is to discover that there is a rhythm beneath the rush, a hidden flow that carries you further with less effort. Like a bird that stops flapping and opens its wings to the wind, you begin to realize that the energy of life itself is trying to carry you if only you would allow it. I used to believe that stopping meant falling behind. I thought that if I didn't keep running, someone else would outrun me. Opportunities would vanish. Doors would close forever. But the more I tried to outrun time, the more time seemed to outrun me. I was tired, scattered, unsatisfied. It wasn't until I began to experiment with stillness, moments of silence, pauses in the rush, that I discovered something extraordinary. When I allowed myself to rest, when I let go of the pressure to always be producing, I found that clarity returned. Ideas arose naturally. Energy returned. Opportunities I had been chasing began to arrive without force. I realized that in quantum time, doing less doesn't mean you achieve less. It means you achieve differently, more aligned, more graceful, more sustainable. Think of a farmer. No matter how much he desires the harvest, he cannot make the crops grow faster by shouting at the soil or pulling on the stems. There is a season for planting, a season for waiting, and a season for reaping. Each is sacred, and each is necessary. To force growth out of season is to ruin it. The same is true of our lives. There are seasons for action, and there are seasons for rest. Both are part of creation. Quantum time invites us to honor these rhythms within ourselves, to notice when our bodies are asking for stillness, when our spirits are calling us to pause, when the whisper inside says, "Not yet," and to trust that waiting is not wasting, it is gestation. It is preparation. This doesn't mean abandoning action. It means aligning action with timing. Have you ever noticed how sometimes, after struggling endlessly to make something happen, you finally let go, and suddenly the path opens, effortlessly? That is the gift of acting in Kairos time, the sacred time the ancient Greeks spoke of. Not chronological time, but the right time, the ripened moment. Living in quantum time requires a shift of trust. You begin to see that life is not a race against the clock, but a dance with the eternal. You start to trust the pauses as much as the surges, the silences as much as the words, the winters as much as the summers. And in that trust, your energy changes. Instead of leaking your life force into constant effort, you conserve it. You release it when the current is moving in your favor. And suddenly, with far less struggle, you find yourself further than you ever reached by force. I think of it like breathing. If you try to only inhale, to constantly take in air without exhaling, you suffocate. Life is sustained by rhythm, in and out, expansion and contraction. Time, too, is meant to be rhythmic. work and rest, speaking and listening, giving and receiving. When we honor both sides of the rhythm, we return to balance. What happens when you live this way? Time begins to feel different. It stretches, softens, bends around you. You may notice that in moments of presence, an hour feels like eternity, rich and full. And in moments of distraction, entire days slip through your fingers like sand. Quantum time is not about the number of hours in a day. It's about the quality of awareness you bring into each moment. So, the invitation is this: release the belief that you must be productive every second. Release the fear that rest makes you weak. Instead, experiment with rhythm. Notice the tides within you. When energy rises, move with it. When it fades, rest without guilt. Trust that the field of life is always balancing itself through you. I can promise you, from my own path through exhaustion and back, that this way of living is not only more peaceful, it is more effective. You will find that the conversations that matter happen at the right time. The doors that need to open will open when you are ready. And the growth you desire will not come from forcing, but from aligning. In quantum time, life is no longer a desperate sprint. It is a graceful unfolding. It is a river that carries you. If you stop fighting its flow, so take this to heart: there is a time for action, and there is a time for rest. Both are sacred, both are necessary, and when you learn to live inside that rhythm, you will accomplish more by doing less. Not because you're lucky, but because you are finally moving with life instead of against it. 3. The power of the seeking frequency. There is a kind of hunger that never truly satisfies. You know the feeling, always reaching for the next book, the next video, the next teacher, the next promise, that this time you will finally understand, this time you will finally arrive. And for a brief moment, it feels like you have found it. The words light a spark. The message inspires you. You feel as though the door has cracked open. But then, just days later, maybe even hours, the spark fades. The old patterns return, and you are once again searching, restless, convinced that the answer is out there, just beyond your reach. This is what I call the seeking frequency. It is not about curiosity that is a gift. It is not about learning that is beautiful. The seeking frequency is something different. It is a vibration of lack. It is the energy of not enough yet, the signal of I am incomplete. And the truth is simple: the universe does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are. When you dwell in the seeking frequency, life mirrors back to you exactly that state. More seeking, more incompleteness, more endless chasing. It's like running on a treadmill. You sweat, you move, you exert everything you have. But no matter how hard you push, you are still in the same place. I know this frequency well because I lived in it for years. I thought if I could just consume more wisdom, attend more workshops, meditate harder, changer, visualize with more intensity, then I would finally feel whole. But the more I searched, the emptier I felt. The more I sought, the further the peace seemed to move away. It was as if my very act of chasing kept pushing the thing I longed for into the distance. And here is the hard truth I eventually had to face. The solution is not in gathering more information. The solution is in integration, living the wisdom you already hold. Think of it this way. Imagine you are thirsty, holding a cup under a waterfall. You keep asking for more water. More, more, more. But your cup is already full. You are so focused on demanding more that you never stop to drink what has already been given. The seeking frequency is that waterfall of information. It overwhelms you, and instead of quenching your thirst, it leaves you drenched, but still unsatisfied. The shift comes when you pause and say, I will drink what I already have. That is the moment of integration. That is when wisdom moves from your mind into your body, from words into practice, from ideas into lived truth. I remember the turning point for me was not some dramatic teaching or spectacular revelation. It was a quiet morning, sitting alone, realizing that nothing new was going to save me. I already had enough teachings, enough lessons, enough inspiration. What I lacked was not knowledge, it was presence. It was the willingness to embody what I already knew. So I began small. Instead of reading 3 new books, I reread one page I loved and then practiced it for a week. Instead of listening to 10 different voices, I listened to my own breath, and something shifted. For the first time, I felt the richness of wisdom not as something out there, but as something alive inside me. When you step out of the seeking frequency, you step into coherence. And coherence is magnetic. The universe does not respond to desperation. It responds to clarity. And clarity comes not from endless movement, but from stillness. Think of a radio signal. When it is scattered, when static fills the air, no one can hear the message clearly. But when the signal is tuned, when the noise fades, suddenly the music comes through. Your life is that broadcast. When you are caught in seeking, your signal is fragmented, and the universe reflects the noise back. But when you integrate, when you embody, your signal becomes undeniable. This is why the practice of stopping, of consciously choosing to rest, to breathe, to be becomes so vital. It breaks the loop of seeking. It allows the wisdom already within you to surface. And the more you honor that wisdom, by living it, the less you need to grasp outside yourself. I want to be gentle here, because I know how seductive the seeking frequency can feel. It gives you the illusion of progress. Each new piece of information feels like a step forward. But in truth, it's often just another lap around the same circle. It takes courage to admit that you already have enough, because the moment you admit it, you also face the responsibility to live differently, to embody what you know, rather than keep searching for more. And yes, it can be uncomfortable, because embodiment requires practice. It requires falling down and standing back up. It requires facing the parts of yourself you'd rather keep hidden. Seeking, in a way, is safer. It allows you to stay in your head, always preparing, always learning, never risking. But embodiment happens in the body, in the heart, in the vulnerability of real life. So ask yourself gently, am I seeking because I truly need to learn? Or am I seeking because I am afraid to live what I already know? If you pause long enough to feel into that question, the answer will rise. And if the answer is that you've been hiding in the loop of seeking, don't judge yourself. We all pass through that stage. It is part of the path. The gift is that now you see it. And seeing is the beginning of liberation. From that moment on, you can choose a different frequency. You can step into the vibration of sufficiency, of I am enough here and now. You can drink from the cup already in your hand. And the moment you do, something subtle but miraculous happens. Life begins to mirror that sufficiency back to you. The universe says, yes, you are enough. And here is the proof. So if you find yourself restless, always chasing the next answer, remember this: the wisdom you long for is not hiding in the next video, the next book, the next teacher. It is already alive within you, waiting patiently for you to stop searching long enough to listen. And in that listening, in that integration, you will discover the end of seeking and the beginning of being. 4. Trusting the whisper of intuition. There is a voice inside you that does not shout. It does not argue. It does not demand. And it rarely comes with guarantees. Instead, it arrives as a whisper, a soft nudge, a subtle knowing, a quiet pull that feels more like truth than thought. We often overlook this voice because it doesn't compete with the noise of the mind. The mind is loud, logical, insistent. It insists on reasons, on evidence, uncertainty, before taking a single step. Intuition doesn't work like that. It doesn't hand you the whole map. It shows you one stone to step on, and trusts that you'll find the next when you're ready. For years, I ignored that whisper. I thought it was too vague, too risky, too irrational. I leaned on logic, on analysis, on what others told me made sense. And yet, looking back, I can see that the times I suffered most were the times I silenced that inner guidance. I chose what was safe instead of what was true. I followed the noise instead of the quiet. And the cost was always the same: a life that looked fine on the outside, but felt hollow within. Here is the paradox. Intuition doesn't always make sense, but it always makes meaning. It carries a resonance, a feeling of rightness that is hard to explain, but impossible to deny once you learn to trust it. It is not about predicting the future. It is about aligning with the deeper intelligence that already sees further than your conscious mind can. Think of it like driving at night. Your headlights only illuminate a short distance ahead, but that is enough to move forward safely. You don't need to see the entire highway, only the next stretch. Intuition is those headlights. It won't reveal everything at once, but it gives you just enough to take the next step in faith. And here is where the practice becomes essential. You must act quickly on the whisper before the mind drowns it out. Because the mind will try. It will tell you it's foolish, impractical, irresponsible. It will demand 10 different confirmations before you move. And by the time you've satisfied the mind's demands, the whisper has faded. This is how trust is built. Not through waiting for absolute certainty, but by honoring the subtle guidance as soon as it arrives. Each time you act on a whisper, even in small ways, sending a message, making a call, taking a walk in the direction you felt pulled, you strengthen your relationship with that deeper intelligence. It's like building a bridge of trust between your surface self and your soul. I remember one moment clearly. There was a decision before me that made no sense. On paper, every reason pointed in the opposite direction. But the whisper was persistent. Go there. Do this. I argued with it, tried to rationalize it away. But in the end, I chose to listen. For months, it felt like a mistake. I stumbled. I doubted. I wondered if I had been foolish. And yet, through that path, I met the people and experiences that revealed my truest calling, something I could never have planned or strategized. The whisper knew what I could not. That's the nature of intuition. It sees beyond the horizon, while the mind can only see what is already known. Following it requires trust, and trust requires courage. But that courage is not reckless. It is the courage of faith, the courage of being willing to walk into the unknown, with the quiet assurance that you are guided. It's important to say this: intuition does not mean impulse. It is not every fleeting emotion or every restless urge. Intuition is quieter, steadier. It carries a texture of calm beneath the suggestion, even if it points you towards something challenging. There is an undertone of peace within the knowing. That is how you begin to tell the difference, and the more you listen, the clearer it becomes. Like tuning an instrument, practice brings refinement. At first, you may confuse the voice of fear or desire with the voice of intuition. But over time, you begin to recognize its distinct resonance, subtle, consistent, unmistakable once you know it. When you trust the whisper, life begins to unfold differently. Opportunities show up in ways you couldn't have orchestrated. Conversations happen at the exact right time. What once looked like coincidence reveals itself as synchronicity, and slowly, you start to realize that you were never walking alone. You were always part of a larger intelligence, a web of guidance woven through every moment. Trusting intuition doesn't mean life will be free of uncertainty. In fact, sometimes it leads you directly into the unknown. But here's the secret. The unknown is where growth lives. The known is safe, familiar, but it cannot change you. Intuition draws you into the places where your soul expands, where you become more authentic, more alive. And yes, sometimes the whisper leads you to detours. Sometimes it leads you to mistakes, or at least what appear to be mistakes. But with time, you will see that even those paths had purpose. They were preparing you, reshaping you, breaking down what was false so that what is true could emerge. So, how do you begin? Start small. The next time you feel that quiet nudge, call this friend. Take this walk. Write this thought down. Say yes. Act before your mind drowns it in doubt. And notice what follows. Not dramatic miracles, perhaps, but subtle alignments, a feeling of flow, a sense of being in the right place at the right time. These are the signs that you are in sync with the deeper field of intelligence. Over time, these small acts of trust accumulate. Your confidence grows. Your fear of uncertainty softens. And one day, you realize you no longer need every answer before you begin. You have learned to walk with faith in the whisper. That is when intuition ceases to be a rare gift and becomes your way of living. And in that way of living, you are no longer merely surviving life through logic and effort. You are co-creating with the intelligence of the universe itself. You are not pushing the river. You are flowing with it. You are not begging for direction. You are listening to the direction that has always been inside you. So when the whisper comes and it will pause, listen, feel the resonance. And then, with gentleness and courage, take the step it asks of you. Not because you know where it will lead, but because you trust that life itself is guiding you. 5. Authentic living. There comes a point in every life when the mask begins to feel too heavy. We spend so much of our time performing, trying to meet the expectations of family, society, culture, even our own restless mind. We wear identities like costumes: the good parent, the successful professional, the responsible child, the strong one who never breaks. And for a while, these masks serve a purpose. They help us belong. They protect us. They allow us to function in a world that can be harsh and demanding. But eventually, the weight of pretending becomes unbearable. The smiles we put on crack at the edges. The achievements we chase feel hollow. The applause of others no longer fills the emptiness within. That is when the whisper of the soul begins to stir. You are not this mask. You are more. To live authentically is to answer that whisper. It is to remember that you are not the roles you play, not the titles you carry, not the image you project. You are awareness itself, consciousness longing to express through you in its purest form. Now, authenticity is often misunderstood. Many believe it means say whatever you feel, or do whatever you want. But that is not authenticity. That is reactivity. Reactivity comes from the surface, from wounded patterns and conditioned habits. Authenticity comes from the depth. It arises not from ego, but from essence. When you are authentic, you are not spilling every passing emotion onto others. You are rooted in a deeper stillness, from which your true nature expresses itself. Sometimes that expression is joy. Sometimes it is truth spoken with firmness. Sometimes it is silence. But always, it carries the unmistakable quality of presence of you being fully yourself, without pretense or defense. Living authentically requires courage, because it often means disappointing people who prefer the mask. Society teaches us to be agreeable, to conform, to fit neatly into the boxes laid out for us. But the soul does not fit into boxes. The soul expands, flows, creates, transforms. To live from that place means some people will not understand you. They may resist your changes because your authenticity disrupts their comfort. And yet, the cost of inauthenticity is far greater. To deny your true self is to wither slowly inside. even while smiling outwardly. To betray your own essence is to trade vitality for approval. I know this because I lived it. I tried to be what others wanted me to be. I worked hard to maintain the image of success, of strength, of being fine. But inside, I was crumbling. The more I performed, the more disconnected I became. It wasn't until I began to shed the masks that I felt alive again. It was terrifying at first. Taking off the mask feels like standing naked before the world. But with each small act of honesty, saying no when I meant no, speaking truth even when my voice shook, choosing rest when I was exhausted, I felt a kind of freedom I had never known. And here is the paradox. When you stop performing, you actually connect more deeply. Because people don't resonate with your mask, they resonate with your presence. When you are authentic, you give others permission to be real. 2. Your courage awakens their courage. Your honesty becomes a light in the fog of pretense. Authentic living also means embracing the fullness of who you are, not just the polished parts, but the shadows too. We are taught to hide our wounds, to bury our grief, to suppress our anger, but authenticity is not about being perfect. It is about being whole. To be whole is to allow both light and shadow to exist within you without shame. It is to see your wounds not as weaknesses, but as teachers. This wholeness transforms how you relate to others. Instead of seeking validation, you offer presence. Instead of hiding your flaws, you allow vulnerability. And vulnerability is not weakness, it is strength. It is the strength of a tree that bends in the wind rather than snapping. It is the strength of water that yields yet shapes stone. When you live authentically, something subtle shifts in the very fabric of your reality. Because authenticity is coherence, and coherence is magnetic. Life begins to organize itself around your truth. The relationships that belong to you deepen. The opportunities aligned with your essence appear. And the false structures, the jobs, friendships, or identities built on pretense fall away. This falling away can be painful. You may lose what once felt safe. But what you gain is beyond measure the joy of living a life that is yours, truly yours, not borrowed from society, not dictated by expectation, but born from the wellspring of your own being. To live authentically is to come home. Home is not a house or a place. It is the state of being where you no longer abandon yourself. It is the quiet recognition, I am here, as I am, and that is enough. So, how do you begin? You begin with small acts of honesty. You pause before saying yes, and ask if yes is true. You notice when you are smiling to hide pain, and instead, you let the pain breathe. You recognize when your choices are driven by fear of rejection, and gently turn toward the deeper desire beneath the fear. Step by step, layer by layer, the masks loosen, and what remains is something simple. Something profound, you, as you are. And when you live from that place, life itself feels different. You are no longer trying to prove yourself, because there is nothing to prove. You are no longer trying to earn love, because you realize love flows naturally from your being. You are no longer chasing a future where you will finally be enough, because you are already enough here and now. This is authentic living. It is not glamorous. It will not always win applause, but it will bring you peace. It will bring you presence. It will bring you the quiet joy of alignment between your inner truth and your outer life. And in the end, that is all we truly seek, not to be perfect, not to be admired, but simply to be real. 6. Neural and heart coherence. The way you begin your morning shapes the way you move through your day. Most of us wake up and immediately step into noise. We reach for the phone, check messages, scroll through headlines, or rush into plans. Before our feet even touch the floor, our nervous system has already been pulled into urgency, tension, and the subtle hum of anxiety. We spend the rest of the day running on that same frequency, wondering why peace feels so far away. But there is another way to begin. A way so simple that the mind often dismisses it. 1 minute of stillness. 1 minute of breath. 1 hand on the heart. 1 hand on the belly. That's all. In that single minute, you invite coherence between the brain and the heart. And coherence is more than a poetic idea. It is a physiological reality. When the heart and brain move into rhythm, the nervous system shifts. Stress signals quiet down. The body leaves survival mode. You open yourself to a state of reception instead of resistance. I used to think practices like this were too small to matter. I believed that transformation required hours of meditation, complex technique, or monumental effort. But what I discovered is that the smallest shifts often carry the greatest power because they change the foundation on which everything else rests. When you place one hand gently on your chest and the other on your belly, you are reminding your body that you are safe. The warmth of your own touch signals comfort. The slow rhythm of breath begins to regulate the beating of your heart. The heart, in turn, sends signals to the brain, and the brain waves start to synchronize. What once was chaos becomes coherence, and in coherence, you open. You stop bracing against life. You stop running. Your body remembers how to receive. Imagine beginning each day like this. Instead of rushing into noise, you step first into alignment. Instead of feeding your nervous system with stress, you nourish it with presence. That 1 minute becomes like tuning a musical instrument. If you begin in harmony, everything that follows carries that same resonance. If you begin in dissonance, the day continues to feel out of tune. This practice is not mystical. It is deeply practical. Neuroscientists call it heart-brain coherence. It's measurable. When you breathe in this way, your heart rate variability changes. Your physiology moves from fragmentation into order. You are literally shifting your biology into the frequency of flow. And the beauty is, you don't have to force it. The body knows how to find coherence if you give it the chance. Think of a shaken snow globe when you set it down. The snow settles naturally. Stillness allows clarity to return. Over time, this simple ritual becomes more than a morning practice. It becomes a way of living. You start noticing when you're slipping back into chaos, when the mind is scattered and the body tense. And instead of pushing harder, you pose. You place a hand on your heart, one on your belly, and you breathe. Within moments, the noise softens. You return to yourself. For me, this practice became a lifeline. There were mornings when anxiety felt like a storm pressing down on my chest, when the thought of facing the day was overwhelming. But in those moments, I would sit, close my eyes, and breathe into coherence. The storm didn't vanish instantly, but the way I related to it changed. I was no longer drowning in it. I had found an anchor. This is what coherence gives you, an anchor in the middle of life's turbulence. A reminder that even when the world is chaotic, there is a rhythm of peace within you that you can return to. And here is something subtle yet profound. Coherence doesn't just change how you feel. It changes how life responds to you. When your internal signal becomes clear, the external world begins to reflect that clarity back. You find yourself speaking with more patience. Opportunities align more naturally. Even conversations shift. Because people sense the calm resonance you carry. It's like tuning a radio. When the frequency is scattered, all you hear is static. But when the frequency locks in, the music plays. Neural and heart coherence is how you tune your entire being to the station of flow. And the shift is cumulative. 1 minute may seem small, but practice daily. It retrains your nervous system. Over time, stress no longer dominates the baseline of your existence. Instead, peace becomes familiar. Receptivity becomes natural. You start to live less in survival and more in creation. I encourage you not to treat this as another task on your list. Don't make it a performance or a chore. Approach it as an offering to yourself. a gift of presence, a way of saying, I am here, I am safe, I am open. Because in truth, that is what coherence is about: remembering. Remembering that you do not need to fight your way through every moment. Remembering that your body, when given space, knows how to find balance. Remembering that peace is not something to be earned, but something to be allowed. So tomorrow morning, before you reach for your phone, before you rush into the momentum of the day, try this. Sit quietly. Place one hand on your heart, one on your belly. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. Whisper to yourself, I am here. I am present. I am not running today. Do it for 1 minute. That's all. And watch how even that single minute begins to ripple through the hours that follow. Watch how conversations feel lighter, how decisions come with more clarity, how you sense flow where there once was only force. This is the gift of neural and heart coherence. It is the gentle shift from surviving to receiving, from scattering to synchronizing, from living in static to living in song. And perhaps, in that one quiet minute each morning, you will discover the simplest truth of all: peace was never far away. It was always here, waiting in your own heartbeat, waiting in your own breath, waiting for you to return. 7. Quantum entanglement, the sacred connection. There is a mystery woven into the fabric of existence, what scientists call quantum entanglement. Two particles, no matter how far apart in space, remain mysteriously connected. Change one, and the other responds instantly, as though distance itself does not exist. This is not only a principle of physics, it is a mirror for the inner life. Your dreams and the deepest version of yourself are entangled in the same way. They are not separate from you. They are not waiting in some far-off future. They are already bound to you, already vibrating in resonance, already whispering through the fabric of your being. The challenge is not about creating the connection, it already exists. The challenge is about allowing yourself to feel it. When we live in chaos, rushing thoughts, anxious hearts, scattered energies, the entanglement feels invisible. It is still there, but the signal is drowned out, like trying to hear a soft violin in the middle of roaring traffic. Yet when you quiet the noise, when you return to coherence, suddenly the connection becomes undeniable. The signal is clear. The violin sings. This is why stillness matters. This is why alignment is not a luxury, but a necessity, because only in that clarity can you sense the invisible threads linking who you are now to who you long to become. I remember a season in my life when everything felt fragmented. I wanted so badly to move forward, to break free from cycles of fear and limitation. But no matter how hard I pushed, I stayed stuck. I tried working harder, setting bigger goals, chasing after more information. And the harder I tried, the farther away peace seemed to move. Then, one morning, sitting in silence, I felt something subtle, a whisper, not a word, but a knowing: you are already there. At first, my mind rejected it. How could I be already there when my life still looked the same? But as I breathed into that stillness, I realized the dream and I were already entangled. It wasn't about chasing something outside of me. It was about synchronizing with what was already woven into my being. That realization changed everything. Think of it like a radio frequency. The station already exists. The song is already playing. The entanglement between your being and your dream is constant. But if your dial is tuned to static fear, doubt, self-criticism, you cannot hear the music. The moment you tune into clarity, the song becomes audible. Your dreams are not something you pursue like prey. They are something you align with, like a musician finding the right key. When you rest into coherence, you shift your frequency, and suddenly the dream reveals itself as part of you. This is not wishful thinking. It is resonance. Consider how relationships reflect this. Have you noticed that when you are at peace with yourself, the right people seem to appear, conversations flow, connections happen effortlessly. It feels as if life itself is weaving things together for you. That is entanglement at play. Your inner clarity reflected in outer events. The same principle applies to your larger destiny, your vision of wholeness, your longing for freedom, your dream of a deeper life. They are not random fantasies. They are entangled threads of who you already are. The clearer your inner state, the more faithfully the outer world reflects that entanglement. It is not the chaos that activates the connection, but the clarity. So how do we live this truth? By choosing coherence daily, by remembering that the dream is not separate, by treating each moment of alignment as a way of awakening the bond. You might begin with simple practices, breathing into your heart, listening for intuition, pausing before you act, asking, am I in coherence right now? These little acts are like polishing a mirror. As the mirror clears, you begin to see that your dream was never far away. It was always here, entangled with you, waiting to be recognized. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you stop chasing, the dream comes closer. When you stop demanding, the connection grows stronger. When you stop treating yourself as separate from what you seek, life itself starts to reflect your wholeness. It's as though reality is whispering, I can only mirror what you allow yourself to feel. Imagine walking through your day with this awareness. Instead of striving, you live in trust. Instead of pushing, you soften into coherence. And from that place, the entanglement reveals itself everywhere in the smile of a stranger, in an unexpected opportunity, in the quiet courage to take one small step forward. Quantum entanglement is not just a theory, it is an invitation to stop living as if your dream is out there, and to begin living as if it is already bound to you. Because it is. Every breath of clarity, every moment of alignment, strengthens that awareness. And as you live this way, you will discover a truth so simple, yet so easily forgotten. You are not separate from what you seek. The dream is not a destination. It is a reflection of who you already are. So the next time chaos surrounds you, pause, place a hand on your heart, breathe, and remember, the entanglement is alive. Even now, the clearer you become, the more the universe responds in kind. Your dream is not waiting in the future. It is entangled with you, here, in this very moment. And the clearer your song, the more beautifully reality plays it back to you. 8. The power of letting go. There comes a time in every journey when holding on too tightly becomes the very thing that keeps us stuck. We wish, we pray, we visualize, and yet we grip the image of our dream so hard that our hands become closed. And with closed hands, how can we receive? Letting go is not about giving up. It is about creating space. It is about opening those clenched hands and saying to life, I trust you enough to release control. I allow you to surprise me. I once thought that the more specific and detailed I was with my dreams, the better my chances of manifesting them. I made lists. I drew pictures. I set rigid expectations of how things must unfold. But the harder I tried to control the outcome, the more resistance I created. It was as if I had built a wall around myself made of my own grasping, and that wall kept the very thing I desired from flowing into my life. It is like standing in a river with a tight fist, trying to trap water. The harder you hold, the less you keep. But when you open your hand, suddenly, the water can flow across your palm. This is the paradox of letting go. Only when you loosen your grip can life move freely through you. The ego loves certainty. It whispers, if I can just know how it will happen, then I will finally feel safe. But true transformation does not come through certainty. It comes through surrender. Because surrender is the soil where trust can grow. Letting go does not mean you stop dreaming. It means you release the rigid picture of how the dream must appear. Maybe you long for abundance. and you think it can only come through one specific career, one specific opportunity. But when you cling to that single path, you block the countless other ways life may deliver what your soul truly needs. Letting go is like saying to the universe, "Here is my desire. Here is the vibration of what I long for. And now I step back. I trust you to weave it in a way far wiser than my limited mind could plan." Think of a gardener. She plants the seed. She waters it. She gives it sunlight. But she does not stand over the soil every second, demanding that the sprout appear now. In exactly this shape, she trusts the natural rhythm. She knows her role is to nurture and release, not to control the timing. Your dreams are the same. They grow in the soil of surrender, not in the pressure of your anxious watch. When you let go, you align with the flow of life itself. Suddenly, opportunities arrive that you could not have scripted. People cross your path who seem like answers to silent prayers. Circumstances shift, not because you forced them, but because you created space for them to unfold. I remember the moment I truly learned this. I was clinging to a vision of how my life had to look. It was a vision built more on fear than on love, though I didn't realize it at the time, and everything kept falling apart. Doors closed. People walked away. Plan dissolved. At first, I thought I was failing, but one evening, exhausted from the struggle, I whispered to myself, I let go. I don't know how this will turn out, but I trust that life knows better than I do. That night, something softened in me. It was as if a knot inside my chest had finally loosened, and in the weeks that followed, new doors opened doors I never would have noticed if I had kept clinging to my old picture. What came was not what I had imagined, but it was more aligned with the truth of my soul than I could have designed on my own. This is the gift of letting go. It clears the fog of control and reveals a horizon that had been there all along. But here is the deeper secret. Letting go is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice. Each day, life will tempt you to grip again, to tighten around outcomes, to demand certainty. And each day, you are invited to soften, to breathe, to open your hands once more. Sometimes it helps to use a simple ritual. When you notice yourself grasping, place your hands palms up on your lap. Take a breath and say quietly, I release. I allow. I trust. This small act signals to your mind and body that it is safe to surrender. Letting go is not passive. It is not indifference. It is active trust. It is choosing to believe that there is an intelligence greater than your fear, weaving your life with threads you cannot yet see. And when you live this way, something profound happens. You begin to feel lighter. The tightness in your chest eases. The constant pressure to make it happen dissolves, and into that openness flows a peace that is not dependent on circumstances, a peace that whispers, all is unfolding as it should. Your dream may not arrive in the form you expect, but if you can let go of the picture, you may find that what life brings is even more beautiful, more nourishing, more aligned with your essence. In the end, letting go is the ultimate act of love. Love for yourself, because you are no longer enslaved by pressure. Love for life, because you trust its wisdom. Love for the dream, because you allow it to appear in its purest form. So release your grip, my friend. Open your hands, open your heart, and let life meet you in ways you could never have planned. Because sometimes, the greatest miracle is not in getting what you thought you wanted, but in discovering that what arrives instead is exactly what your soul had been calling for all along. 9. The journey from inspiration to integration. Inspiration is a beautiful spark. It arrives like lightning, sudden, luminous, indéniable. It wakes something inside of us, a remembrance of who we could be and what life might feel like if we stepped beyond fear. Inspiration is the breath of possibility, but inspiration alone is fleeting. It fades like morning mist when the day's noise rises. True transformation begins only when inspiration is integrated into the living rhythm of our days. I used to chase inspiration as though it were the goal itself. I would listen to teachings, read books, attend workshops, and feel the surge of energy that comes with hearing profound truths. In those moments, it seemed as if everything had changed. But then, when I returned to the ordinary patterns of my life, the old habits crept back in. I found myself repeating the same thoughts, reacting with the same fears, falling into the same loops. This is the gap between inspiration and integration. Inspiration shows us the mountain peak. Integration is the daily walk that actually takes us there. Without integration, inspiration becomes a memory instead of a reality. So how do we cross this gap? It begins with the practice of stopping, not stopping in the sense of giving up, but in the sense of pausing, pressing reset on our automatic patterns. When you take even a few conscious breaths, you step outside the momentum of old conditioning. That pause is a doorway. Through it, the spark of inspiration is no longer just a thought. It becomes embodied as presence. Imagine someone who hears the truth. You are not your fear. At that moment, they feel free, light, expansive. But unless they bring that truth into the small and difficult moments, like when anxiety rises before a conversation, or when self-doubt whispers at night, the inspiration remains theoretical. Integration is when they pause in that anxious moment, take a breath, and remember, I am not my fear. That remembrance, practiced again and again, reshapes the nervous system. Slowly, the old reflex dissolves, and a new way of being takes root. Integration is not dramatic. It is often quiet, almost invisible. It looks like choosing kindness when the old self would choose defensiveness. It looks like sitting in silence for 2 minutes in the morning, instead of rushing straight into noise. It looks like placing your hand on your heart when you feel overwhelmed, whispering to yourself, I am safe. I am here. Each of these acts seems small, but together, they weave a new reality. Inspiration gives you the vision, but integration gives you the foundation. Without the foundation, the vision cannot stand. It is tempting to crave constant inspiration, to run after one more book, one more video, one more teacher. But at some point, the deeper call is not to hear more truths, but to live the truths you already know. That is where the real transformation unfolds. Think of it like nourishment. Inspiration is like the scent of delicious food. It awakens the appetite. But integration is the eating, the digesting, the way nutrients become part of your body. Without integration, you remain hungry, no matter how beautiful the aroma. With integration, the truth becomes part of your blood, your breath, your very being. This journey from inspiration to integration also requires patience. The ego loves speed. It wants to leap from insight to instant change. But the soul moves with a different rhythm. Integration is slow, like seasons changing, like rivers carving valleys. It asks for gentleness, for repetition, for forgiveness. When we stumble back into old habits, I remember a time when I felt inspired to live more fully in presence. I promised myself that I would never again lose myself in worry. And for a few days, I felt radiant. But then life tested me. I slipped. I found myself worrying again, doubting again. At first, I thought I had failed. But then I realized this is integration. It is not about never stumbling. It is about remembering more quickly each time. Slowly, the return to presence became easier. What once took me days now took me minutes. That is how inspiration becomes embodied through imperfect but persistent practice. Integration also means weaving truth into the ordinary. It is not about waiting for a sacred retreat or a quiet mountaintop. It is about bringing awareness into washing the dishes, walking through the grocery store, listening to a loved one's story. When inspiration colors these small, daily acts, Life itself becomes the spiritual path. And perhaps the most profound part of integration is this. You stop chasing transformation as a distant goal. Instead, you begin to see that each moment of practice is transformation. Each conscious breath is awakening. Each act of kindness is the fulfillment of the inspiration you once sought. In this way, the line between seeking and living disappears. You no longer live for the next spark of inspiration, because you are already living as the fire. The truth is no longer something outside of you. It becomes the texture of who you are. This is the quiet miracle of integration. It does not announce itself with fireworks. But one day, you wake up and realize you respond to life differently. You are gentler with yourself. You are steadier in the face of fear. You are more open to love. And you realize the inspiration you once chased has now become your way of being. So, when the next spark of inspiration comes, do not hold it only as a thought. Pause it. Breathe. Let it drop from the mind into the body, from the body into action, from action into habit. In this way, the fleeting spark becomes a steady flame, lighting your path one day at a time. And as you live this way, you discover a truth so simple and so profound. The real miracle is not in finding inspiration, but in becoming the living expression of it, coming home to the present. You do not need a perfect road. You do not need a flawless map. Life has never asked you for that. What you need is something far more humble, far more profound, the courage to take one small step, then another, guided not by fear, but by presence. It begins with the simplest acts: pausing, listening, breathing, trusting. These gestures are not dramatic, yet they hold the weight of transformation. They are like the quiet stitching that mends a torn fabric, so subtle that you may not notice at first. Yet, over time, they restore the whole. Awakening does not mean you will never get lost again. No. Awakening means something gentler, kinder. You will know how to return more quickly, more tenderly, with less judgment. Instead of punishing yourself for wandering, you smile softly and say, I drifted, and now I return. That act of returning, repeated again and again, strengthens what I like to call the muscle of authenticity. It is not about being flawless. It is about being faithful to the truth of who you are. Think of a child learning to walk. She stumbles. She falls. She gets up. Each fall is not failure. It is part of the practice. Over time, her legs grow stronger, her balance steadier. This is your spiritual path. Each stumble is an invitation to return. Each return makes you stronger. And here lies the quiet miracle. As you live aligned with your deeper essence, reality itself begins to rearrange. Life is not separate from your inner state. It reflects you, like a mirror that cannot help but show what you hold within. The more you choose truth over pretense, love over fear, presence over distraction, the more your world bends toward harmony. There is no need to chase a new life out there. No disparity. Search for a distant horizon. The new life you seek is not far away. It is already here, waiting in the soil of this very moment. Like a seed, it has always been present, even if hidden. When you breathe, when you trust, when you soften, that seed sprouts. I know this because I, too, have walked through seasons of darkness. I know what it feels like to search endlessly for answers, only to collapse under the weight of striving. I know what it means to crave a map, a formula, some guarantee that I would not fail again. And yet, what saved me was not a grand revelation or a perfect plan. It was a return to simplicity, the breath in my chest, the stillness in my heart, the quiet trust that even here, even now, I was enough. You see, the mind wants to complicate the journey. It wants steps, rules, a sense of control. But the soul whispers something softer. Be here. Trust this moment. All you need is already within you. And so, awakening becomes less about striving upward and more about settling inward. Less about chasing some distant mountain peak and more about discovering that the summit has always been beneath your feet. When you live this way, even the ordinary begins to glow. Washing dishes becomes a meditation. Sitting with a loved one becomes a sacred act. Walking through a crowded street becomes an opportunity to carry presence into chaos. Every step is a prayer. Every breath, a reminder that you are alive. This is the gift of authenticity. When you live true to yourself, you are no longer at war with the world. You stop fighting the current, and instead, you float with it. Life no longer feels like an enemy to conquer, but a river to trust. And what does the river do? It carries you not to where your ego demands, but to where your soul belongs. The paradox is beautiful when you stop chasing. Life begins to move. When you stop forcing, doors open. When you stop searching for a new life, you realize that newness has always been here, breathing with you, pulsing in every heartbeat, waiting to be seen. So, let yourself rest. Let yourself trust. You do not need to control the entire horizon. You need only to walk the path that appears under your feet in this moment. Step by step, breath by breath, you discover that the journey itself is the destination. And as you live this truth, you become a living testimony, a radiant reminder to others that freedom is not found in perfection, but in presence. You show, by your very being, that awakening is not about escaping life, but about embodying it. So, here is the simple truth. You don't have to go out and find a new life. The new life has already found you. It is here. It is now. It is woven into the fabric of this very moment, waiting for you to notice, to embrace, to live it fully. Take a breath. Feel your heart. Allow yourself to be here. In this stillness, in this presence, in this ordinary miracle, you are home.